How to care for African dwarf frogs. African dwarf frogs are small frogs that are native to Africa. These frogs are relatively easy to care for, as they take about the same level of care as goldfish. Set up an appropriate tank for your tiny friends, including enough water to keep each frog happy and healthy. In addition, these frogs prefer live food like bloodworms or black worms, though they can also eat frozen food. Method 1. Setting up a tank. Purchase 2 or more African dwarf frogs to house together. These frogs like to live in social groups, so don't just get one. Having more than one at a time is really not any extra work, and you'll have happier, healthier frogs. These frogs can be in a tank with fish, but avoid putting them in with aggressive fish. For instance, bettas can be good tank mates, but it depends on the betta, as some of them are more aggressive than others. If you put a betta in with these frogs, watch their behavior, particularly at mealtime, to see if the betta is bullying the frogs. Aim for a tank with 1 to 2 gallons, 3.8 to 7.6 L, of space per frog. While you can keep African dwarf frogs in smaller areas, the water gets dirty too quickly. Plus, this much space gives each frog enough room to move around. Choose a shallow tank to make it easier for the frogs to get to the surface. While these frogs stay in water all the time, they actually don't swim all that well. Make sure to get a tank with a secure lid, as the frogs can jump out. These frogs don't need any special lighting for their tank, but they can handle special lighting if other fish in the tank need it. Add large gravel to the bottom of the tank. The gravel needs to be large so the frogs don't accidentally eat it when foraging for food. Fill the tank up to about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters, from the bottom. Pick aquarium-safe gravel. Fill the tank with conditioned tap water. Put 20 inches, 51 centimeters, or less of water in the tank. Add the specified amount of complete water conditioner to the amount of water in your tank. The back of the bottle should tell you how much to add, as it depends on the brand. Make sure to use a dedicated measuring spoon, don't reuse it for food. Mix the water conditioner into the water. You can find complete water conditioners at most pet stores or online. These conditioners remove chlorine, chloramine, and even heavy metals that could harm your frogs. Make sure to leave enough room at the top of the tank for the frogs to surface and get air. About 2 inches, 5.1 centimeters, is fine. Set up a filtration and aeration system. The frogs absorb some oxygen from the water, and having these systems helps increase the level of oxygen in the water. Find filtration and aeration systems designed for frogs at pet stores or online. However, the tank shouldn't have strong currents, as the frogs cannot swim that well. You should be able to tell once you set the tank up. If the frogs seem to have trouble swimming, you may need to turn the filtration system down. Add aquarium-safe hiding places and decorations. PVC pipe can provide a hiding place. However, you can use any decoration that's marked aquarium safe. Don't use things you find outside, as that could introduce bacteria to your frogs. The frogs need space to hide from the light at times, which is why they need caves or PVC pipe. It's also a good idea to have a large branch or structure that goes up to the surface of the water. That gives the frogs a place to sit when they're breathing air. Use a tank heater to keep the water between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 and 27 degrees Celsius. The ideal temperature for these frogs is 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 degrees Celsius. A tank heater that warms the water will go a long way to keeping these frogs happy and healthy. Heaters come in 2 main varieties. One kind, the submersible version, sits along the bottom of the tank. It heats the tank evenly because heat rises from it. The other kind has coils that sink below the water at the top of the tank with controls on top of the water, but you must remember to turn it off before taking out water. It doesn't heat the water as evenly, but it should be sufficient for your frogs. With a tank heater, you also need an aquarium thermometer so you can monitor the temperature and ensure it's not getting too warm. It's also a good idea to have a thermometer even if you don't have a tank heater to make sure the frogs aren't getting too cold. If you don't buy a heater, set the tank in a warm area to make sure these frogs are happy. Method 2. Providing food and a clean environment. Buy live food for your frogs. These frogs prefer small, live prey, such as Daphnia, mosquito larvae, black worms, bloodworms, and brine shrimp. You can find these foods at most pet stores, or you can order them online. Rinse any food well in cool tap water before giving it to your frogs. They may also eat some fish flakes if you're feeding them to other fish in the tank. If you don't want to use live food, you can try feeding them pellets made for African clawed frogs. Alternatively, you can use frozen food, but make sure it's thawed before adding it to the tank. Feed the frogs all the food they can eat in half an hour every other day. Add several small scoops of the food you choose to the water, and let the frogs eat for 30 minutes. Once the time is up, take out any food that's left behind. Make sure that if you have other fish in the tank, the frogs are eating as well. Sometimes they can be crowded out by aggressive fish. Watch the tank when it's feeding time to make sure everyone is eating. If you have aggressive fish who want to eat the frogs' food, try buying sinking food for the frogs, such as sinking shrimp pellets. The fish will take the food at the top, while the frogs will eat the food at the bottom. Siphon off 10 to 20% of the water each week and replace it to clean the tank. You can use a turkey baster for this process. Pull the water out of the tank with the turkey baster and dispose of it. Replace the water you removed with dechlorinated water. You don't need to replace the water completely unless something goes terribly wrong, and even then, it's not always a great idea, as it can shock the frogs. Don't dump the water in your kitchen sink, as it could spread bacteria around. Don't take the frogs out of the water, as they need the water to stay alive. In fact, it's better not to handle them at all. Treat them as you would fish. Wash your hands thoroughly every time you touch the tank. These frogs can carry salmonella, and it can pass to you when you open the tank. Wash your hands with warm water and soap for 20 seconds before rinsing every time you mess with the tank. Make sure everyone who comes into contact with the tank does so as well. Method 3. Troubleshooting issues. Watch for the frogs to shed their skins. Frogs will shed their skin like other amphibians. They may look whitish before they shed, which is perfectly normal. After, they may eat the skin they shed. If they don't, you can remove it from the tank with a pair of tongs. If the frog still looks white after shedding their skin, your frog may have a fungus. Treat fungus and bloat with aquarium salt. If your frogs have continually white skin, they likely have a fungus. Also, frogs can look bloated, like they may explode, which is likely due to a bacterial infection unrelated to fungus. For either one, add 1 tablespoon, 17 grams, of aquarium salt per 4 gallons, 15 L, of water. Stir it into a cup of dechlorinated water before adding it to the aquarium to dissolve it. If you notice fungus or bacterial infections, talk to a veterinarian before treating your frogs. If only one frog has a fungal infection, move it to its own tank to treat it. Aim for as big a tank as you can manage. Only do this when the frogs have fungus or bloat, as they are not that fond of the salt. However, it should get rid of the fungus. If it doesn't, talk to your vet. Avoid fish fungal medicines, as it can harm frogs. Copper-based medications, especially, are toxic to frogs. Check with your vet to make sure the salt treatment is safe for your other fish. Move eggs to their own tanks. If you see clusters of eggs and you want to raise them, they need to be in their own tank. Gather up the eggs with a turkey baster and gently release them in a newly prepared tank. The eggs will look like small bubbles. Prepare the new tank in the same way you did for your frogs, but keep in mind, each egg could become a frog, so you may want a significantly bigger tank. If you don't move them, the frogs may eat them. You can feed live, baby brine shrimp to the tadpoles when they emerge.